Pure historical is a term used in the Doctor Who community to describe serials that are set in the past period of Earth's history where the only anachronisms are the TARDIS crew themselves. These were quite popular back in the day despite there only being 12 of them in total, which were all in the first 4 seasons of Doctor Who, barring Black Orchid. They are often seen as a hangover from Doctor Who's original concept to be purely edutainment, which I must say some of these historicals do a really good job of. Since these stories are mostly of a very high quality in my opinion, I thought it would be fun to analyse what makes them so effective and what gives them a different feel to other genres of Doctor Who story. A sense of danger. The historicals never feel safe in the slightest, which is usually due to the culture shock and or barbarism of the period. There always seems to be a lot of conflict and tension. Most have a human that want one of the main characters dead or harmed in some way. I think the greater realism and relatability of a story set on Earth in a time period that most people will recognise probably enhances this quite a bit. What really adds to this feature though is how in most historicals they're separated from the TARDIS or each other, which often leads to a sense of hopelessness and dread, which really aids this feature in keeping the viewer engaged. Darker themes. They also have darker themes than most of the sci-fi serials of the Hartnell era. This kind of ties into having a sense of danger, but I do think it's worthy of its own category. In the Hartnell era, historicals aren't very tame, and it's really not afraid to show the cruelty of the period it's portraying. For example, look in The Crusade. In episode 3, Barbara is given a knife and told by a man who is hiding her from the guards that she is to kill his daughter or herself if the guards find her. This is so that they don't become sex slaves to Ella Keir, who is a local warlord. That's really bloody dark stuff, especially as Doctor Who was considered a kids show back in the day. But it's not done without good reason. It really helps express the dark struggle that many had to go through, as well as show how dire the situation for the main characters is. Hill's excellent performance in that scene really makes it a superb one, and again builds up the sense of danger ever higher. Even in The Romans, which is basically a Roman themed comedy, doesn't hold back on the dark side of Rome. Ian and Barbara are taken as slaves after all. Do I even need to mention how dark the massacre is? Of course, not all the sci-fi stories are tame. For example, the Daleks' Master Plan might be one of the darkest Doctor Who stories ever made, especially in the first 5 episodes, but on the whole, I do feel that historicals have darker themes, and all the better for it, as the brutality of human history is something that needs to be faced squarely if you want a real understanding of these time periods. Great characters. This isn't to say other Hartnell era serials don't have great characters too, but on the whole, I really think historicals do characters the best in this era, probably because they're much more character-driven stories and don't have monsters to rely upon to make the story engaging. Again, this combines with darker themes as you really feel sorry for some of the more empathetic characters this type of story has to offer, and in that respect, it gives a more personal connection to the periods it's portraying. Of course, on the flip side, you also have some of the most despicable villains Doctor Who has ever portrayed, but even then they manage to be fairly nuanced with the characterizations of many of the more empathetic characters as well as some of the villainous characters, some examples being Marco Polo and Richard the Lionheart, who really aren't straightforward characters as being the good guy or the bad guy. It's complicated, and that's a good thing. The conflict with these well-written characters is often the driving force of these stories, and in my opinion, it really works to keep these stories both entertaining and engaging. World building. If there's one thing we don't get much of in Doctor Who anymore, it's good world building. This is probably due to the fact that they had a lot more time to flesh out stories back in the day, and it's done particularly well in this genre. With this aspect in play, it really feels more like an adventure. You really get to know the society and the characters that inhabit the places the TARDIS visits a lot better, which for me is an extremely engaging feature to these serials, and to be honest, I'd say that world building is essential for most good Doctor Who stories, and is why the newer stories often don't work in my opinion. What helps create this is the fact that the crew often spend quite a number of days in these locations and assume roles within the society and get to know people. Companions are usually relatable to the viewers, so seeing how they interact in the periods is great fun to watch and gives a more personal connection, which makes you more likely to comprehend what it might have been like to live back then, which is definitely an asset to world building. Again, many sci-fi serials do world building in this era perfectly, I just think it's stronger in historicals. So there's a few of my thoughts as to why pure historicals work really well. Of course, this doesn't apply to every historical, and I'm still a big fan of Hartnell sci-fi stuff, but objectively, the historicals are superior. Now go watch a Hartnell historical like a good 60s fan. That's it for this video, and I'll see you back next time in another one.